Meeting for the Zoning Commission of the Village of Campton Hills for May 8th, 2024. Mr. Brown, can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Frederick?
Here.
Mr. Grabarski? Mr. Kopek?
Here.
Ms. Turney? Mr. Teat? Here. And we also have the village attorney, Mr. Forte, the liaison to the Plan Commission, Jerry Johnson, is absent, as is Mike Millette, but the village president is here as well, and the secretary, me, Jim Brown. So we have a quorum.
Okay.
And I'd like to remind everyone, while I have the microphone, to turn on your microphones.
They can all be on at once now, right? Okay. All right, very good. Item number 3, motion to approve the minutes of the Zoning Commission meeting of April 24th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Kopek has made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Teat. All right. Questions, concerns, or comments on the 7 pages? I don't have any comments or any that I reviewed. I didn't see anything. Welcome. Hearing no comments or suggestions or criticisms or corrections, can I get a voice to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
And second from Ms. Turney. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to approve the minutes of April 24th. All right, public comments. We've got 2 slips. If you did want to speak, there is a public comment sheet. If you have not filled out one of these and you do wish to speak today, leave on the table there and just bring it up to me. Paul, and forgive me if I pronounce, is it Steinle? Or Steinle. Steinle, thank you, sir.
You're closer if you're in German.
Is it, from a reminder, 3 minutes?
That's
know?
fine.
And then if I give you, I'll give you a few, 30-second warning.
I sign it up at the time, whatever you like.
All right, please.
So I know you're, at least based on the discussion from the last meeting, you're probably going to embark on a discussion of commercial vehicles. And that parking is an issue near and dear to my heart. As a way of background, in the last year, I spent 9 months enduring a neighbor of mine parking 2 semi-tractor trailers in his lot, and then getting up at anywhere between 3:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning and firing them up. Unfortunately, his diesel tractor was extremely badly tuned and woke my family up over and over again. I do owe a debt of thanks to our current police chief for finally taking action and getting the trucks out of there. However, when I heard the discussion that was brought up by another resident at the last meeting about potentially things being missing from the 2023 to this zoning ordinance related to commercial vehicles being parked in driveways, alarm bells went off in my head. Because while they may not be tractor trailers, they could certainly be large trucks of any make, model, type, year. And it is a fact of life that folks, I have family members who are parking their own commercial vehicles in their driveways. They get up really early. And if they drive late model F-250s, F-350s, or Econoline vans, that's usually pretty good. It's like a passenger car starting up. On the other hand, if it's something bigger than that, yeah, we're going to have trouble. It pales in comparison to perhaps a rooster crowing, but at the end of the day, I would like to see our zoning ordinances be proactive and not reactive. I've also had experience trying to get nuisance complaints acted upon by the authorities, both in this community and others, unfortunately, in the last 40 years of residence. And that's a real tough one, because you're already up at 3:30 in the morning, and then you have to call the police, and they will come out, and of course, by the time they get there, the truck is gone, and then you have to go from there and over and over and over. So what I would like to say and propose to this committee is that we reenact what we had before, and in fact, the current ordinance used by Kane County for the unincorporated areas, it seems more than adequate. They put a weight limit on the vehicle of 8,000 gross vehicle pounds, which is roughly equivalent to a fully maxed out F-250 pickup truck or an Econoline van full of plumbing supplies and tools and that sort of thing. I know the aesthetics are what most people think about. They don't want to see some gaudy decal next door to them. I'm far more worried about the sound. That's kind of where I come down on it. I think in Captain Hills, most of our lots are big enough that we can endure something that's maybe 400 feet away that we may not want in our driveway. But I can tell you from personal experience, I'm only about 3 houses away from Burlington. I hear every Jake brake all night long, and I hear every hard truck that comes down Old LaFox Road where I live. And so the sound is the thing that is near and dear to me. So I thank you for your time. I'll conclude my remarks. I did print off, I'll give it to Jim, the ordinance that King County is using. I know your matrix, the last time you
Yeah.
said that was missing some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank-
folks. I
thank
can't
you.
stay, unfortunately.
Well, thanks for your time, appreciate it. Holly?
Might be like 3 minutes and 5 seconds. I've been trying to tailor it down.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening. I've been told that I should potentially preempt my public comments by letting you know that I'm a resident. I thought everyone was aware of the obvious, but I'll just state it for the record tonight. I'm making my public comments as a resident of Campton Hills. I very happily reside at 42W 500 Foxfield Drive. I want to discuss the apiary flyover barrier again, just to provide a little more insight. I don't have bees, but I've researched them, and as Mr. Brown said at the last meeting, bees take off like airplanes, not helicopters. The flyover barrier isn't really a flyover, although it is called that. It's actually choosing 3 directions of the hive that you don't want them to take off from and guiding them in the direction that you do want them to go using fencing or shrubbery. Although you guys previously agreed to lower the footage from 25 to 20 feet from a lot line, I strongly disagree that it's still too stringent. 5 feet with a guided route of exit is more than enough to meet the needs of beekeepers and their surrounding neighbors. The simple facts are bees go where they want to end up, honeybees are not interested in disturbing people, and they are on a sole mission to seek out pollen. I completely agree with the new consistent wording when it comes to manure management. But please reconsider the 5-foot setback on yarded animals. I think it's very important. Because I didn't last time, I also wanted to slightly discuss roosters, despite your recent consensus. I don't have any, but neighbors do, and I think they're awesome and I think they're valuable. I can tell you that they are much quieter than a major portion of the Foxfield dogs that we also love. I definitely support loosening the 5-acre minimum, and I want to explain why. I've always had this logic. I've thought about it a lot. A really good portion of 5-acre parcels are long and skinny. The houses are all generally around the same front setback. And where do people put their coops and barns? Closer to their homes, not in the back 3 to 4 acres. So applying this logic, the residential estate lots and where people have their barns and coops are similarly the same distance from neighboring homes as those on many 5-acre parcels. This said, and the reason I'm following up on them, I'm not sure that allowing roosters on all permitted chicken lots is a good idea. Maybe make the cut at REs only. I don't know, and that's up to you guys. I think it's a safer place to start, as I think the idea of legalizing roosters kind of freaks some people out, even though we probably all hear a rooster where we already live. Talking to residents constantly for years, one of the most common things I'll hear is, I love the sound of them, and it makes me feel like we are really in the country. To end, something I think about often as I've been trying to figure out this entire zoning riddle for a while now, how do we make everyone happy and protected? The complete reasoning behind zoning. I think it's vital to remember that just because we decide to put something into official writing doesn't mean that we're going to have this huge influx of people all of a sudden.
Okay, it's
The
3
animal
minutes-
people-
3 minutes, Holly, so.
5 seconds. The animal people are already here, and it's why they came. They're already doing it, and most people don't even know about the amazing setups, homesteads, and hobby farms that already exist. Why don't we know about them? Because the people that are doing it are smart, responsible adults in our community who are not creating nuisances. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments? I don't have any other slips, so I'm just checking. Okay. All right, moving on to item 5, the review and discuss draft articles introduced at previous meetings of the zoning commission. Article 4 and Article X, the soon-to-be numbered dimensional design standards and keeping of animals.
Before
Yes.
we get-
Yes.
Just like to bring up possibly a housekeeping issue. Jim, in the PDFs that you sent out, there's all these sections of garbage text.
Yeah, I
You're
had
aware of
indicated that in my email when I tried several times when I was converting the Word document to PDF, and it didn't work.
Oh.
It was 6 PM on Friday. I tried, I think, 3 times, and it kept doing it. Perhaps if I had shut the computer down all the way and restarted it, but the only thing really missing is a couple comments by me, and I printed those out here.
Okay.
And at the top is the agenda item, which we can do without.
Yeah.
And in one case, the, kind of the text above,
Yeah.
one of
Yeah,
the charts was
there was
missing.
a header
And I
in
ca-
the
Yeah, the header to
chart,
the
yeah.
chart. And it just said,
Okay.
you know, P is permitted, C is conditional.
Okay.
So that's, I think
Is it-
that's the only
is it-
thing that's really.
Have you tried a different font or something?
I didn't do that, but I'd never had this issue before. Sometimes
Okay.
Adobe just
Okay,
acts
well,
weird.
Glad
and
you're
that's
aware
it.
of it then.
So, yeah, I haven't, I didn't try to convert anything today. I was gonna test it and forgot about it, but, yeah, so.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. Satisfied?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the memorandum, Jim, Mr. Brown. That's always helpful of establishing what's going on in the packet and everything, so thanks for putting that together ahead in front of the attachments of the agenda, so that kind of gives a good background. So, Article 4 is dimensional and design standards and general standards. We looked at this last time, and I think I have a couple of grammatical things, but that's all I have. I have 2, like, small grammatical types of, does anybody have anything more of context, or, yes, Jim? I'm sorry,
Just,
Joe.
just the corner side yard still doesn't flow for me. You know, we've got a front yard, a side yard, a rear yard, and a corner side yard. And I'm just asking if there's a better way to identify that than a corner side yard. A lot of people have owned houses for years. I've never heard that term on any house at any time. And it just seems out of place.
I think, one of the earlier packets you had actually a diagram, I think, that showed, at least I thought I saw one that kind of gave, it was a nice presentation to say,
Yeah.
this is the backyard, this is the side yard, and I believe it was a corner
Yeah.
lot. And
Yeah.
So I think that visual presentation is something that might help. And maybe we could just pull that
Yeah.
or
yeah, I
somehow
can- yeah.
integrate, to make sure that people understand, maybe, I don't know, if we could bring that in to say, this is what we're trying to, this is
Okay,
what we
yeah,
mean.
it's a common zoning term. It's all,
Yeah,
it's found
I
in almost, it's
understand.
not something that I or the predecessors in doing this made up. It's
Right.
pretty common.
Right,
It's-
I get that, and I just, well, maybe it doesn't have to be in the document,
Yeah.
but at least we could provide that as supplemental
Okay,
information. And maybe that diagram would help
Mhm.
people to feel more comfortable with that terminology.
Yeah.
So maybe we just add that,
Yeah,
not necessarily put it in the document, but let's at least bring it forward so people can have that as a reference
Yeah.
to help educate them, make them feel more comfortable about it.
sure.
All right? And if, from there, maybe we'll go on and say, maybe we'll look at something else, but, all right? Joe? Okay. And anybody else on this chapter? I've just got a couple of minor grammatical things on the top of page 2 of 4, the zoning districts. I think the very top of the page under C, so we got C3 in there again.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that goes to RD, right? Very, very top. There you go. I think we have a zoning district, C3 is really RD, right?
Yeah, that's right, I thought I.
Yeah, I think you
made
changed
that,
it
yeah.
one place, but maybe just another one
Yeah,
slipped in there.
okay.
All right, so it's just a minor
On page 2,
grammatical
yeah.
thing. And then the top of page 3, the second line. If you look at the second, it says RD district. I believe that should be a period and a space. It's just a grammatical thing. These standards do not apply, right? So it's
Yeah,
just-
mhm.
So just a little grammatical
Yeah.
thing in there. That's all I had. Actually, one more. I did have another comment. You have galvanized steel in there, and, there's different types of galvanized steel. So I guess there's like hot dip steel, but there's also,
Right.
like, if you had steel siding that was which is galvanized, like you can buy
Uh-huh.
steel siding now that's galvanized. It's not like hot dipped usually where it's, this big
Mhm.
dipped in coated you know, it's painted and it looks, it's like siding. So I guess what I was trying to say is that, are we trying to, is this more of a visual thing, or is this, you know, is this, we don't want something that looks,
Yeah, this is for aesthetics,
Yeah.
and this is not, I have to remind myself all the time, this is not prohibited materials. It's just materials that would be limited to 30%.
okay, I see.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And I think someone made the comment that they thought galvanized steel or galvanized metal should be included in this, and that's why it's in red
Sure.
and underlined there, but,
Yeah, because I know like anodized, galvanized, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very smooth, it's, you know, it's a nice look, but, you know, hot
Uh-huh.
dipped is a very, much more rough look, you know, but it might, maybe that's the look that they're going for, so.
yeah.
Okay,
If you want to take it out, I
Uh,
can do that, I mean.
all right.
whatever.
I think Joe brought that up last time.
yeah.
Well, I think I had mentioned part of it, but.
I think, yeah, I
the thought-
think, yeah.
The thought was that we don't want raw galvanized sheets, corrugated steel
Okay,
as part of the aesthetics.
okay.
I mean, there's so much better materials available,
Mhm.
so that, you know, putting it on the bottom of the list is, you know, I think appropriate.
Yeah, we have corrugated metal, that's number
Right.
2
Yeah.
on the list, so
Yeah.
is that good enough to include what you want, or do you want, should galvanized be listed separately?
I mean,
I mean,
Well, it says galvanized metals, not galvanized steel. I think that's what we had talked
Yeah.
about.
well,
Right.
it's going to be
I
steel.
think it's fine. Well,
yeah,
it'd be more than likely. But who knows the technology in the future.
right.
I think it's fine to leave it in.
Okay.
Could you just summarize the box, the comment staff box down there, that what were you trying to say?
Yeah, I was just noting to the text in bold red above that, you know, I found these definitions, but I wasn't quite certain where to go from here. Joe had brought this up about, you know, a difference between plastic and
Right.
vinyl.
Mhm.
I guess vinyl is a type of plastic, if I understood this correctly, and just asked the question, so I included the definition, so essentially, what do you want to do with number 7 and 8, plastic and vinyl? Do you want
On
those?
7, you can remove its high molecular weight polymer, because that's not correct.
Okay,
There's a lot of different molecular weights of plastic.
okay,
So I think, I think you put in a good definition, but you can stop at the first
Sentence,
sentence and stop there.
and then just cut the second sentence, right?
okay, but you still want plastic and vinyl on this list? Was that the issue? You limited
I
or
only
not?
wanted them separated as materials. On the list was not the topic I discussed.
All right.
Yep, I'd leave
I
it,
don't, I don't see how you can differentiate between the two. Vinyl is plastic, and most plastics have, poor weather resistance. I mean, vinyl just happens to be one that has, better longevity,
Uh-huh,
but there are other, high molecular weight plastics that may even exceed vinyl. So somehow differentiating, you know, plastic versus vinyl is incorrect.
uh-huh.
I disagree. It's terminology, and then when you really get down to the engineered aspect of it, they're different. So you can have a
Vinyl is-
plastic material that's not vinyl, but vinyl materials are plastic.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, well, then we agree.
Yeah.
But that's why they're separate, because you can have a plastic material that's not vinyl. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just what Jim put in here, thermoplastic, there's also other properties that are considered plastics that aren't necessarily thermoplastic. But let's not spend a lot of time
Yeah.
on it, because
If you take a step back to.
I just think vinyl and plastic, we separate them, and I think we're good.
Okay, and I think, back to what we were just talking about before, it's only limited to 30% of the area as well,
Yep.
so. I say we leave it in, we'll just strike the second sentence on number 7, and then we press on. Okay?
Sure.
All right, okay. Any other comments? I didn't have any comments on any other page 3 or page 4, and that would take care of Article 4. All right? All right, so then, if hearing no other input on Article 4, moving on to Article X, the soon-to-be-named Keeping the Animals article, or soon-to-be numbered. These are the comments that we discussed and everything last week. Any comments off the top of the head or just going down the page? Yep. Chris?
I had a comment on page 3. I don't want to jump ahead, though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's go through it page by page.
I've got a question just on the definition part of what Holly spoke about. Since the document that we reviewed had a value associated with roosters, should roosters and chickens be separated in this document? And I'm not overly familiar with it, but what I read was roosters at 5 acres, so that was a separate issue.
At one time, yeah.
But if they're different when it comes to how they should be kept, then maybe we should separate them. So I don't know if this is, Jim, the plastic and vinyl thing, but you know,
And-
chicken's not a rooster, but a rooster's a chicken, right? So could they have different values for how we keep them? And if it's different, then I think we should separate it.
Well, I think we decided as of right now, wherever a chicken was allowed, a rooster was going to be allowed.
Correct,
So that's why we separated the
Yep,
distinction.
well, I think that's what we did talk about, but
Right.
now it's
And
2
I
weeks
believe-
later, and I'm looking at it saying, I think they should be separate.
I think there are some distinctions, but I don't know about separations. We've kept them in the same, we can look at it and change it. Right now, I think they're in the same district, but there are differences in that they can't be a nuisance. And they
Yeah,
are
yeah.
called out later on, and so that, but other than that, there really is no difference that I think how they're treated.
Well, but it seemed to me that there was a greater restriction on rooster than chicken, so it doesn't solve the problem by just saying you can have as many roosters or have roosters in the same amount of space as chickens, because what I'm remembering from that dialogue, we went from 5 acres all the way down to whatever the minimum size
The
is.
zoning, whatever the zoning
Okay,
is.
so, you know, we discussed it last week, there's no
Yeah.
decisions, right? We're working on this.
Right.
I think we need to revisit that, of separating them, if we're gonna have different values for how they're kept. And my opinion is that they should be different. We took the 5 acre all the way down to whatever the minimum is, and I think that's the different things that I looked at over the past couple of weeks. I think that it's not restrictive enough.
Okay, what are the concerns?
To me, just the 5 acre start came from somewhere, right? So why would we drop it all the way down if, and I'm gonna say, the roosters are more of a nuisance than the chickens? That's my interpretation. Because why would we have a nuisance ordinance and say you gotta have 5 acres of property to keep roosters? I just think it should be separate, and then I also think that it should be more restrictive than what we talked about 2 weeks ago.
So you said the chicken should be more restrictive, or just roosters should be more
Roosters.
restrictive? Okay,
Just the
what do you
roosters.
propose?
I would say in the 1.3 acre property makes more sense to me than all the way down to, we did talk about our, RA1, correct?
I think we're
Right,
talking about
permitted, so.
all the way down to R4. I mean,
Yeah, on
all the
page-
zoning districts. So if you're gonna have a chicken, you can have a hen or a rooster, or any combination thereof. Right now, the way the proposed bill is written.
Yep.
Or with it, yeah. And you're saying you should have chickens in any zoning, all the way down to R4, but only roosters in like R3, RE3?
Correct.
Okay.
Chicken part, no problem.
All right.
Rooster part, some problem.
I think some of the conversation we had last time too was what kind of a nuisance are there? How many complaints do we have? And what is the problem? And I think there was no problem.
Exactly.
There was no problem.
Because that's
So-
what the discussion was between people who knew what the nuisance violations were and that there weren't any regarding
Exactly.
roosters.
So that's why we
Just
went
because we don't
to,
have complaints doesn't mean it isn't a nuisance. Just means that maybe people aren't complaining about it. But how did it start at 5 acres? Where did that come from?
I think the consultant who prepared this
Yeah,
document picked
absolutely.
it from wherever.
Okay,
Right.
so I'll go
But
back to.
I feel that the consultant picked a lot of things in here that really are not applicable to the village of Campton Hills. So I don't know, I mean, while I think we can take it under advisement, I think, as we discussed with the roosters too, we talked about situations where a dog could be a nuisance and dogs are allowed
Yeah.
everywhere. So I think the approach that we took was, you know, since we had not had many calls, at least that we were aware of, that if a rooster becomes a nuisance or a dog becomes a nuisance, then we have a method to address that. Where why restrict it? Because, and I think somebody had commented that, you know, you can have a rooster and nobody could even know if you manage it correctly and properly. So I think we just collectively felt that if you're allowed chickens, you should be allowed to have a rooster. And if it becomes a nuisance, then the nuisance ordinance could take over, much like it could for a dog bark.
Yep, so what was the value used for roosters in our previous document? Not what the consultant prepared, what we had on the books.
It was 5. I mean, from the 2023 ordinance, it was 5 acres.
What was it before that?
I think it was 5, yeah.
Right, so, I mean, there's some reasoning behind that.
Yeah.
Right? So, does that document go back to 2007?
2014. The previous one, like 2014.
Okay, so the last 10 years, it wasn't a problem
And
being
it's in the
a,
county even before
Yeah.
that, probably.
last 10 years, not a problem. Nobody complained when it was at a 5-acre value. I mean, it's the same argument, just turn it the other way.
Yeah.
So it's my opinion.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm all for consensus, but after reviewing it and discussing, looking into it, I don't think that's the right value.
Okay, all right, and that's what's a nice thing, is to come back and review these things, you get a little time to reflect on it and stuff, so. My thought process is still that, it's still the same, and I think if we're gonna allow chickens, I think we have to allow people to be responsible with those. And, if they can have a rooster responsibly on their property, then they should be able to have that rooster on the property responsibly. That's kind of where I was coming last meeting, and that's where I still am right now. So unless there's more of a consensus to change it, I'd like just to keep it the way it is right now. That'd be my suggestion.
I think my opinion is to leave it the way it is now, because I feel too that if there are some zoning districts where maybe it's an R1 or an R4 where there's a strong HOA, if they so choose, the HOA could enact rules and regulations that are more restrictive than the villages, and then they could potentially, you know, say you can't have a rooster in this subdivision. So I feel that while it gives a little bit more flexibility, I think there still are means and methods for more restrictions in some of those subdivisions, so.
So just an aside to that, so what if a HOA ordinance was less restrictive than the village? Which one prevails?
The
From our
village.
perspective, it's just our ordinance. We just enforce our ordinance. And then the HOA can deal with anything that's more restrictive.
Okay,
Correct?
all right. All right, yeah.
Yeah, the HOA couldn't allow their homeowners or property owners to have rules that are less restrictive than the village code. Village code would still apply. But if they were more restrictive, then the HOA's rules or covenants could control.
All right. Very good. All right, I think we, for now, that's where we're gonna keep that, but we can always still think about it, because we'll have another review later down the road.
Well, I guess it'll be interesting when we get to the public hearing, because I'm sure that'll be,
There'll be differences of
Yeah.
opinion, I'm sure,
a
but we still have time.
I would say just give it a chance. You know, if we haven't had problems with, you know, the roosters crowing up to this time, and as has been pointed out, you know, many times, the roosters are not in the back, you know, 5 acres of the land, they're up close to the house and everything else, and if nobody's really noticed it, and we haven't had any complaints, let's just go with it for now.
Okay.
The responsible owners usually eat them on Sunday if their neighbors complain.
All right.
The noisy ones are quite tastier. Yeah.
All right, let's see. So if we start at the top of page 1 of 4 of Article X, there's the whole thing about the dogs that, or not, the types of pets. That was in the first summary paragraph. We got the table in there we just talked about. So then to page 2, talked about the 25 feet going down to 20 feet from the lot line. This is under Bs. So let's see, in lieu of the comments that were just made this evening, it says a minimum of 10 feet from the principal structure, a minimum of 50 feet at the time, okay, permitted only in the rear yard. I believe that one of the comments was they wanted 5 feet. I don't have a problem with 20 feet from any lot line. That's my opinion. I'd just basically keep it where it is, but there was other input, so I'm happy with the 20 feet for now. Hearing no other comments, down to X5 chickens. Talked about the disposal, responsible manner on a regular basis of manure. And the roosters there is entered in. The roosters are managed in a manner that mitigates crowing and nuisance issues such as limited exposure during light and morning hours.
So not to be argumentative,
Yeah.
Ralph,
No?
but it's always good when we have open discussion,
Sure.
not everybody agrees on everything. See, I mean, based on the previous discussion, I think item 3 should be removed then. If there's no distinction between roosters and chickens, then why are we calling out that roosters are allowed? You guys made the argument.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Right.
Then here's another part of it, you know?
I don't, does it hurt to have it in? I don't think it conflicts with
I'm
anything.
very black and white, Ralph.
Mhm.
So to me, I think they're different only because we identify them differently. So even though they're allowed, it's only in this place that we're calling them out. And to me, they should either be, it should either be separate and identified separately. It's got nothing to do with the size.
Okay.
But in this one line, it tells me that they're different from chickens.
All right, so
In the
what
black
about,
and white perspective.
Would it be
What about-
better if we titled section X5 chickens and roosters then?
That could work. If you're gonna identify them separately down here, then yes.
Okay.
Because that satisfies the requirement of we call them different, then
Okay.
show them both.
okay. The other option would be in the definition section, you know, if you did something there, but that might be the simplest thing, would just be to add the title, the chickens and
We can,
roosters.
yeah.
That'd be I think that'd be the simple, it would,
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you want to throw away the idea you're mitigating the potential for nuisance, and you're just calling that out to the property owner, that they have to mitigate.
Right, right.
Well, at the same time, if we just make the heading chickens and roosters, now we're admitting, or at least we're recognizing that those are permitted fowl, or whatever, that are allowed in the village and specifically allowed, so,
With mitigation.
Yeah, yeah.
right.
Or conditions, yeah.
Right,
conditions,
conditional.
With conditions, yeah.
But
So let's just change the title X5 to chickens and roosters, all right, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, and then in the table, I'll do it as well. for
Okay,
that table.
okay, all right. Very good, good suggestions.
No,
I didn't, yes,
I'm sorry,
Go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, I had one other comment on page 3.
Yes.
Since we're there.
Yes.
Item B, 4B, it refers to a maximum of 1 chicken coop, up to a maximum of 60 square feet. I thought when we talked about it, we
yes.
were going to allow several chicken coops, but it was a maximum total square footage of those coops. Couldn't exceed that 60
That's
feet. And
correct.
The purpose was that for,
Yeah, I think that was
whether
just
it's
an
two smaller
oversight.
ones
Yeah,
or
my
things like that,
mistake,
so
yeah.
just,
I believe
yeah,
it was
we upped it
100,
to 120.
20, yeah, 120 square feet.
Yeah, my oversight.
That's okay, that's a good
Okay,
catch,
go back.
that's a good
That's why we
catch.
do this.
Chris,
All right.
on
that was changed in another
B4B.
section, I thought.
Yes, I know he wrote it, I believe also in the summary, I think in the
It is.
summary.
Yeah, I thought I wrote it
all right.
someplace, but
Yeah, so the
Didn't do it here.
so the maximum 1 chicken coop has been removed, so we basically have, there's no limit on the number of chicken coops, but we said the maximum square feet is
120
120.
square feet.
and that was reflected in the minutes too, I looked.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
so maybe.
right, yeah, so, Chad, just make that correction,
Yep.
Jim, there, that'd be great, good catch. All right. All right, It's, okay, so the rest of page 3, we start going to horses, equines. All right, I didn't see anything there. And then on page 4 of 4, I didn't see any other corrections or additions to barnyard animals or anything else there, so that would take us to the next, table 5.1. All right. Permitted and special uses in all zonings. And if I'm going too fast or something, please don't hesitate to speak up. One quick question for Mr. Brown, on this table. If there is a blank line, like the very last line of the very first page of table 5.1, the very last line, it's all blank. There's several lines that are all blank. Is that, is there no?
Normally I highlighted that, I just wanted some discussion of it, because they were new or kind of new categories, and I wasn't certain what we wanted to try. I could have put, for this one, the studio, physical activity, and hobbies, that should probably be permitted in the commercial zones.
Okay, all right. I
But that's
noticed
a
there.
new category, yes.
Yeah, so,
I'm confused by this table. Because you've got sections where it looks like they're headings, where there's nothing, then you have the same style, and then you'll have a line, for example, private household, on the third line in the table. There's nothing in there, it's highlighted in gray. And you come down just past the general sales bold line, and you've got retail sales or service, and you've got it all filled out. So what is the highlighting, the gray shading doing?
Right, it's like an outline, and I tried, as I redid this table, more for someone who uses it quite frequently, like the zoning administrator. I don't like things alphabetized, because I can never remember what they are, so I like to group it in like an outline form. So
Okay.
the first big black heading there with the white text is all the kind of residential uses.
Right, I
And
get
then
that.
And then the first subcategory in the outline is private household.
Right.
Okay,
So
and
that
then
would be
under
the
private
gray.
household, there's several other subcategories.
Right.
Okay, so private household does not have anything in, just like sometimes in an outline, there's no text.
Right, but
When you
then-
start a paragraph, and in other places, there is text. It's just you have a heading with a little text behind it. The colors, some of this might fall away. It was just easy for me as I was creating this table to have that, so I could find the proper place to stick things in. Like I said, I wanted to do it in kind of an outline format. So for example, when you take a look at that first section, it says private household, so there's subcategories in there, all right? And then housing services for the elderly. I ultimately decided not to break those out because they all have similar definitions, assisted living facility, full nursing care. The impacts are kind of the same for land use. So I didn't feel that that needed to be broken out, but I still needed, that's still like a, paragraph B in the outline, so to speak. So that's why that's gray. And then when you
Okay.
go right below that, that's gray, but there's nothing in that line. That's because all those other accommodation services, there are subcategories. So that's the way that works.
Okay. I can
Yeah, got it now. I know it's
see
kind
where
of
you're heading
confusing.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it is confusing to everyone, I mean, we can look at a different way. I can maybe make it like an outline or whatever, or just eliminate the major headings in gray altogether. Like I said, as I was going through and trying to prepare this, that was quite helpful for me to plug in what I felt was a logical placement for some of these uses, So bed and breakfast, that should come under, the other accommodation services and so on. So we have, retail sales and service down below, and then that's broken out into more specific categories.
So, Ralph, was your question, why do we have a line item and then there's no zoning district associated with it?
Well, there's no PST or dash mark or anything, so I think blank was not defined what a blank is, and maybe that was because Jim was just looking for some
Yeah.
input,
Yeah.
about, hey, is this, what do we want to do with this? So I know there was probably a handful of blank, ones that are out there. And I'm not sure if that was just a time constraint either too, that, like animal hospital, veterinarian, animal kennel, it's like, okay, where do you want to put that?
Right.
Yeah, so, but I just want to make sure that either it was something that you wanted input from us,
Right.
or I was missing something that maybe
No.
blank meant as a default to something else,
Right.
so.
Okay, specifically, you were lumping auto parts, accessories, tires, and service all into that category? So that means auto repair as well was lumped into that?
Auto parts, accessories, tires, auto repair. If you take a look at the definition, I think it includes that, yeah.
Well,
Where's
that-
auto
I think
repair?
auto repair definitely should not be in the same group as parts,
Okay,
retail sales. It's not retail sales. It's a service, and it involves, a completely different atmosphere and commercial, I think, almost a different approval process for, a garage, mechanics in a garage as opposed to a retail store.
I agree. I think also too, you're talking maybe possibly dealing with hazardous waste as well, fluids, hydraulic oil.
Right,
things
you
like
got
that.
materials and
Whereas,
disposal
with
and.
the store, if you're selling wiper blades and carburetors and
Same
things
with
like that.
tires, too.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So well, we can break it out then. So the auto parts, that'd be, and I have here
More
in the,
retail.
I have it up on the screen now, the definitions. I was thinking places like AutoZone, Jiffy Lube, Firestone, there's just a wide range. If you want to break that out, and you want to, if you're gonna allow both of those types of uses in the same zone, then there's no need to break it out any further. You see what I'm getting? But if you want to say that the repair and the retail, we want to have maybe one in C2 but not in C1.
Right.
We want to outlaw or prohibit one altogether, then we should
Right.
break it out.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no reason to break them out.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't have a good flavor of what direction you want to go. I will say this right now, a lot of the new definitions, I went through, from the American Planning Association, they have like a manual of land uses, and I use that as a basis, and they categorize by ownership, by function, by building type. I think I used the function one. So a lot of these new titles came from that. I mean, there was a lot of thought putting into this like global, every land use, almost every land use you could think about. And then a lot of the definitions, because they had all the terms defined, come from that. So, and
The
that-
selling of parts is far different.
It
than
is,
the
it is. I
service.
would agree.
Yeah.
I would
So,
agree, that's why, yeah.
But
So
maybe
if you
just
wanna-
look at how we show gas station, because you're storing VOCs there,
Yeah.
and you're
Then,
doing the
you know-
same thing when you're changing oil or working on,
Right.
on vehicles.
Yeah, so what?
Different than selling parts.
Right.
You can,
Yeah.
again, if you're gonna break it out, or you want one to be a special use perhaps, and the other permitted use, then it should be broken out. So that's just what I want,
Yeah.
what I want to hear on this chart. That's,
Well,
break
I
it
think
out,
that-
combine.
I think maybe the differentiator there is if you're just selling parts or if you're having vehicles service.
Right, okay,
So
we can,
whether
yeah.
it's mufflers, tires,
Separate those.
engine
Yeah.
repair,
Yeah,
that's
got it.
service.
Yeah.
And that's a different category than retail.
Yeah,
pure
That's not
retail.
his question isn't whether or not it's a different category, it's do you want them in different zoning districts? Because if
Right.
you don't, it doesn't matter to break them out.
I think you would differentiate them, and some would maybe require, you may want a special use permit as opposed even in a
Right, and
commercial
that's the
district.
question.
Right, right,
Is that
definitely.
going to be an issue?
It definitely should be separated.
So where would, like, a service, not a service, but a retail sale, what would that be under? Would that be under what type of zoning? Retail sales, so basically C2.
C1 and C2.
C2.
Yeah.
It looks like well, because that's convenience store, so 1 or 2, right?
Yeah. Same as lawn and garden supplies, and like you've got gas stations there as a special use.
In either one. So if you're gonna have a
Right.
gas station in either one,
Right.
of 1 and 2, then I would probably do the same thing
With service.
with the
With the
service,
service,
I
yeah,
think.
that's fine.
It'd be
Right.
at either 1 and 2, special use,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they'd have to come before the village to show
One or
that they
two.
mitigate any of the hazardous
Right.
materials.
Do you-
and
yeah, do you have
plan
the-
to address it.
Yeah,
Right.
where are you parking the vehicles that are gonna be worked on? How are you
Right.
gonna do that? How's it gonna
Yeah.
be screened?
But you have to separate gas stations from the service
Service
being done,
stations.
because the gas stations are gonna have 10 to 20,000 gallons
Well,
underground storage.
But
Now-
if you have it as a special use,
Hmm?
that covers you, because you can make them show that they've got a plan and it meets.
Right.
Yeah.
meets your-
So,
But a gas station is not a service station anymore.
Correct. So it's more of it, they
Yes.
make their money on
Yep.
convenience stuff.
all right, so then we'll separate
Cigarettes, booze.
sales, automotive retail.
Yeah, I'll break
separate,
it out, yeah.
And then the other one would be, service would be with special use.
Yep.
In both,
Yeah.
okay?
Well,
Okay.
if you
I like
think
that.
about it, a
And then
vehicle
the-
dealership,
just
most
the-
of them have
The
service
same thing with
inside,
tires,
huh?
because that's
So
different.
it
The
should be
storage of
fair.
tires and how those are handled are different than, you know, the fluid aspect of it.
So, oil change, muffler shops, tire shops,
Right,
Right, you
general
got it.
auto
Mhm.
repair, those all become special use.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So either, I guess maybe the easiest way is to ask you, Jim Brown, are there questions about some of these other ones? Like I see one of Mobile's Food Services is new, and there's nothing in there. It's on the top of what is it? It's the second page, second page of the chart.
Yeah.
Mobile Food Services. There's
That was,
nothing-
it was just, again, one of the terms I ran across, we don't really address it. Let me,
So that would
Are you saying a food truck?
right, like a food truck, and I don't know if it's gonna be regulated someplace else, do we wanna allow them, do we not want to allow them, that was just the question, so there's a lot of,
wasn't addressed
yeah,
before.
things in there, and I just wanna raise the issue, do you wanna put this in? And I do, before we get into this, I prepared, if I may, just read something of my thinking on how I put this together, just very brief, I'll be under 3 minutes.
Okay.
You can cut me off if you want. So I have these two documents that go together. We have the matrix or the use table and then the definition. So it's really, I tried to do this so we'd have a thorough discussion. And as you've already discovered, I put a lot of things in just so that we, again, review it and ensure that we have this right. Okay, so there's there's blanks, there's things highlighted in red. And my general thing is to try and, brevity and clarity, my two buzzwords. And we used to have these lists that went on, forever. There's a long outline in every conceivable list. The joke among planners was they would list something like a haberdashery, which you don't find anymore. I mean, so that's not called out specifically, it just comes under a general category of retail sales, okay? So that's been the trend with zoning ordinances over probably the last, 30, 40 years. So then the question becomes, is there anything, so you have a definition, and the two that come to mind are retail sales, general retail sales, or personal services. And they lump a lot of different things into those, okay, which is good. You're condensing things. You don't have every conceivable, cigar store, watchmaker. You don't have all that. It's all been condensed. You don't need to list that all out. But there are things that might fit the definition of general retail that you don't want in your town. And in that case, you need to develop a separate term for that use and then a separate definition. So some shop that's gonna sell maybe vaping paraphernalia, maybe you don't want that. And that would fit the definition of general retail. So you need to create a separate category for that, and I'll list it. For personal services, getting your hair done, fingernails, toenails, whatever. Depending on how you write your definition, tattoo parlor might fall under that.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't want tattoo parlors or body art establishments or whatever they're called. So you call that out separately, and then you indicate by these dashes that it's not allowed in any zoning district. Because I've had arguments before where someone will come in and say, I want to open this shop, and me or someone on the staff will say, well, we don't allow that in town. And they say, boy, it seems to me like I fit the definition of personal services, I fit the definition of retail. I think you're just being arbitrary and capricious is the term in your interpretation of the code, because I think I meet it. Then you get into a big argument, and I've never been taken to court on it, but I like to avoid arguments. I like to point to something clearly in the code. It says, no, you can't have a tattoo parlor. So that's why some of these things, I tried to break things out. Maybe they don't need to be broken out, maybe you just don't want them, but that's the kind of the general thinking behind the way this is set up, other than, in addition to being kind of organized by use groups. I think I have convenience store in here twice, but that's what's going on here. So if you see anything else that you think should be broken out more, that's great, we can add it, we just did that here. You came up with a new category, we can insert that. If you think we can collapse things, then that's fine, that's what this exercise is for.
If-
Yep.
Ralph?
Yes.
One item that historically that I've experienced trouble with,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you, across the country, is massage parlors.
It's another one, yeah, because that could ease, yeah.
That, and some restaurants hate the fact that you allow food trucks. So that's one that I think that both of us, from experience, should be called out, and we should either make it a special use or somehow define where it will be allowed, because that's become a point of contention in various cities and villages. And the way we didn't ban massage parlors completely, because it's a approved good use for therapy, you'd say any massage parlor that opens must have more than one activity in it besides massage, so you don't have the chains that end up doing sex trafficking as the purpose. Because that is where trafficking does take place across America, is massage parlors. You don't have the downtown for it, but a lot of
Right.
villages do.
Mobile food services, so basically a food truck, we're trying to say, are you looking for guidance, or just like, whether we want?
Yeah, I
them
don't know,
all,
do we
or-
have anything that addresses that? Do we need to address it? This doesn't seem like a place you would have a lot of them, because there's just not a lot of daytime employment here.
Do they have to
That's-
get a county health permit to operate?
Normally, yeah, they do in Lake and Cook, I'm sure they do in.
I mean, they've
They-
become increasingly popular for residential use, for people to have them come to parties.
Baseball games or whatever.
Exactly. You know, I know our schools, D303, they employ food trucks regularly for activity, you know, after-school events, things like that. So it is pretty a popular
Yeah.
thing around here. But do we
And-
need to
and they're
regulate it?
probably-
I
And
don't
they're probably
know.
coming from a different part of the county, they're not coming from within Camden
Right.
Hills.
So I guess my question though is, under the mobile food services, are we talking about their location, their home, their business, or where they're allowed to?
Where the truck's allowed to park?
Where they're allowed to operate, yeah,
Where
open
they-
out cell
Where
phones.
they operate versus where they park at night? I mean,
Well, that's a
Right.
separate thing.
Yeah.
Ralph.
Yeah.
right, but that's
Does
sort of
the
like.
village derive any sales tax from the mobile truck?
You could,
But doesn't.
not now.
Licensing fee, permitting fee.
Yeah,
Right
things
now,
like-
we don't have anything.
Right, but we have to be careful of, because we've got a handful of restaurants that do contribute, right? You don't want to have something where
Yeah.
somebody can pull up a mobile truck and
In front.
in front of the restaurant and take business away, which is also taking the sales tax dollars out of the village's pockets.
A lot of communities have passed, it's kind of a multifaceted ordinance with regard to food trucks. It talks about location, licensing, permitting, and, I mean, we've done them for many communities,
And
probably in the
that's
last 10
normally
years.
outside the zoning ordinance, though. isn't it?
Usually
say,
is,
that's
it's usually a standalone ordinance.
Yeah.
I mean, Administrator Rooney makes a good point. You don't have a presence where they appear every day. You know, a lot of towns you might see that. But even for special events or for larger events, those types of ordinances can help just with the licensing aspect and the control and the location, so, if there's a desire.
I mean, if you had a baseball diamond that had, or a soccer field that had a lot of big tournaments on the weekend, the food trucks come and go and make a living, and that conceivably could hurt your 4 or 5 places in the center of town not getting that business.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just a thought.
Yeah.
You probably should address it, just like massage parlors haven't been addressed. They haven't been a problem. That doesn't mean they'll never be a problem.
Well, there's been a lot more food trucks than
Yes.
massage parlors.
Well, I
So-
can say as a sports mother, I'm not gonna leave a baseball, softball, soccer game to go run into town to eat when my son's gotta play another game in a half an hour. It's not a conflict of interest, I will tell you that, from
But the-
experience.
But the other part, though, is some of the restaurants over the years have fulfilled that service.
Sure.
Sure.
And then, you know, the.
Food truck
Just
from
go back
St.
to the sa-
Charles or Elgin comes into town.
Yeah, I mean, it's losing the sales tax dollars, and since we don't have a village tax, you know, that's important for the restaurants to not only, operate without that type of competition, but to flourish also. And I'm a sports dad too, and I've had a lot of the trucks come up to the fields, and I'm with you. It's far enough away from, you know, brick and mortar. I
Right.
think it's just something that requires some more attention.
So then in terms of zoning, they would only be allowed to, let's say their home base of operations would be in a commercial district. They're not allowed to park in a residential or resupply themselves in a residential zoning. So it would be so by this table and the zoning consideration is C1 and C2.
But then you're
But,
limiting
no.
people from allowing them to come to their homes to
No,
first private
this
events.
is just where they're allowed to have their base of operation. Where they do, where they supply food off the street in neighborhoods or wherever, that's not part of this zoning.
Well, I think that's what you are trying to do.
Yeah, we are trying to address that.
I think
Well,
where
but you're
where
saying
they-
that needs to be a separate ordinance.
No, we're not saying anything, we're just trying to get a sense of what you want to do with food trucks. We're not trying to tell you what that
Yeah.
solution should be.
I think one
Barb
option.
just used the term event-driven, so maybe that's a place to start too. And I would tell you, a graduation party, you
Yeah.
consider an event.
Right.
Yeah.
Block party.
Yeah.
When the township open space has an event, they might bring in a food truck.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it definitely serves a valuable purpose in the
Right.
community.
yeah.
I don't think they should be so restricted where they don't feel they can come here anymore.
You could do it as simple as say if they have a county health department license, they're allowed everywhere.
Yeah.
And not deal with it at all.
But
But
then
that
then
doesn't-
they have to prove that to us before they operate. I mean,
Posted
you
on
can't
the
have
vehicle.
somebody just show up and say they have a county health permit.
Well, it's usually posted on the truck.
They'll be in the truck.
Yeah.
I don't always see them.
So, the way my feeling is, then, I don't think it really would be in the zoning.
I don't think so
I don't
either, I
think
just
it's
brought it
zoning.
in here.
It's a
so,
good
if
topic,
you
but I
want.
don't think it would be in the zoning. I
Yeah,
just-
if you're not restricting where in the village that they can operate it, you wouldn't include it in
Yeah.
the use matrix.
Right.
If the board at some future time wants to consider an
Yeah,
ordinance
yeah.
for,
But we
for the use,
would
then
want
you
to
could.
restrict their location, not in front of the restaurants in the village.
No. I mean,
Well,
it's,
if you don't
That's
have it in
ide-
here,
that's
they could
ideal.
pull, pardon me?
I think that's ideal.
They
but-
have the mobile
but-
food truck in front of the restaurant?
But to restrict their operations, unless it's gonna have to take another village ordinance as opposed to a zoning ordinance.
I mean, you can't take it out of here if it would allow a mobile food service to, I'll use the Campton Center, pull in there, you got 8 restaurants there, and you have 2 or 3 food trucks out there. That kills that business and it takes away our sales tax revenue. And that's not good. So you do have to restrict.
if you're, there may be some overlap between what some of your food service businesses are in, these adjacent areas and other parts of the town that might have the same zoning district. So it may be difficult to do it in the use matrix here, but I understand your point. And like I said, some ordinances that require licensing also limit the trucks to be used, only in certain areas of a particular municipality, or restrict them from particular certain areas, like a downtown area, restaurant row, kind of, something like that. So, you probably have to look at the zoning map to see if, all of the restaurants happen to fall within one district, or type of zoning district, and then if there weren't other areas of town that were also in that type of district that you would want, or you would allow a food truck to operate that didn't have restaurants in it, so.
And taking that a step further, could you also then make it like a special use, or just like, or is that just like now? Or
I just wouldn't want to be dealing
Deal with that, yeah,
this
yeah,
on special
okay.
use and a public hearing for this. It's just,
Yeah, and then again, it kind of gets down to the granularity. Are you going to restrict a good humor truck?
yeah, I know. That's it.
That's still a
Right.
food truck.
Maybe one thought I have with this is, you know, you have the truck itself, which is a business, but then you also have the truck when it's not serving food. So maybe, and I think it goes back to what you were saying, is you have, and I don't know what you'd call it, but, you know, whether it's the mobile food service, home base operation or something, so it says, you know, in the commercial district, that's where you park the food trucks when they're not being used at a special event or a block party or something, when they're just not there, they're not sitting in front of somebody's home. So maybe you have, somehow you break mobile food service up into two categories, maybe where it's the, when, you know, like if you're a company that has several food trucks, okay, you park them, they're, you know, parking or non-operational hours, or however we define that. Because, I mean, I think it's not necessarily, the zoning is really, I think, from that where that business, and this one is unique because it's a mobile business, but maybe like the, you know, after-hours use, or the, you know, not necessarily if they're at a baseball game or at, like I said, a special event, because those maybe then would be where a permit's required from the village, so they can go to the block party and they can go to the special event or something, but it's when it's, you know, 1 AM and the chef is taking a nap and going to bed, where does that truck sit? It can't sit in front of a residential zone, it needs to sit in a commercial zone or be parked somewhere like that maybe.
Thank you, Chris. That's exactly what I was trying to get to, is that you gotta have a base of operations, and that should be in the commercial district. And it should only be permitted in the commercial district.
Yeah.
The base of
Two
operations.
separate things, it's two separate things.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And maybe by distinguishing it in the special use list at least, then we're not necessarily saying you can't have mobile food trucks in and around the village at events, but if you have a base of operations or something, this is where the base of operations can only be located. So you don't have residences who maybe own a food truck parking it in front of their home when it's not being used, maybe.
And this also goes to other mobile services like vehicle detailing, where you do have a large service van that should not be parked in a residential area. But it can be used there.
Yeah, there are a couple different subjects. So one is
Yeah.
the storage of a commercial vehicle, and then, you know, for instance, with a mobile food truck, you have food preparation. County health permit is likely going to require evidence of where the food is being prepared.
Stored.
If it's, and stored, is it
Yeah.
in a commercial facility? Is it being performed in a home or some other type of use, or some other type of location? So probably not a lot of things that the village would be regulating unless you had that commercial facility within the village. But I think for now, not limiting the location in the use matrix is probably, but by district, is probably a good idea. If the village at some point does want to restrict particular zones within the village, they can do that by ordinance.
Okay. All right. So I just want to go back to the sales tax part. So you operate a mobile food service. You're in any place in the county, and no sales tax is being charged, or do we just not see it? They put a dollar amount on what they charge, and then they have to, send money into the county, or whatever way it works out. Does anybody know that?
Well, the village doesn't have local non-home rule sales tax, so they wouldn't get, even if they were here and we allowed them here or didn't allow, whatever it might be, they don't collect it. It's likely collected based on their location of operation.
Yes.
It's certainly remitted to the state, and then if they have a local sales tax within that community, then that percentage would also be remitted on monthly or quarterly basis, however they submit their ST1s.
All right. I think we beat that one pretty well. Okay.
And what was, I'm sorry, what was the final? Did-
You didn't get all that? You didn't get
Strike
all
it,
that?
strike
Strike
it.
it.
Take it out, okay.
Take it out, yeah.
All right. Sorry,
don't do
sorry I
anything
asked the
for
question,
massage
put it in
parlors.
here.
We didn't talk, we didn't get into the massage parlor aspect.
I'm just trying to solve a problem before you have a problem.
Yeah, no, it's
Is there a general?
Massage parlor.
mobile massage parlors.
Now, that's a good idea.
Sorry, General, what?
As long as we can charge sales tax.
Yeah. Use tax.
Permit fees.
Is there a general use that, like a body care facility that it would fall under right now, or not?
What are we talking about?
Massage parlor.
Massage
Massage
parlors?
parlor?
Is that like nails or like?
Yeah,
no
and we
hand-
go down to
or
personal
spas?
services.
It's under personal services.
It would probably fall under personal services. I broke out body art establishment, but it would probably fall under the personal services. I'm trying
What's
to
that? I'm trying to
get
find it.
to.
Top of page 2.
I don't
Top
know.
of page 2, personal services,
I
yeah.
pull, funeral home doesn't belong between those two.
Yeah.
Personal services established, funeral home and
I
body art.
wouldn't call that a personal service, would you?
So I guess you're saying you follow, a personal services establishment would fall under that category?
Right, so the definition, this is from the current ordinance, and I didn't really change this, I added body art, tattoo parlors. An establishment that provides frequent or recurrent needed services of a personal nature. Typical uses include, but are not limited to, beauty shops, barber shops, tanning salons, electronics, it's supposed to be the esthetician. It somehow did an autocorrect on there, it says typing esthetician. Repair shops, that's another thing she did. Nail salons, laundromats, health clubs, dry cleaners, and tailors. Does not include vehicle rental agencies. That's from the current ordinance in this.
Jim, can you read that first line again, just the first sentence?
An establishment that provides frequent or recurrent needed
Okay.
services of a personal nature.
Yep, that's it. So, Mark, what you talked about, although a massage would be personal, is it needed in the same vein that the other ones are?
From a zoning perspective, to say yes or no when they come in for the permit to establish that business, we don't have a way to say no to it right now.
See, I'd be comfortable separating massage parlors under its own category. When you,
Physical
you know,
therapy.
watch the news or read the paper, and people go into jail, it isn't from the barber shop or the beauty salon.
Or the therapeutic massage.
Yes.
Well,
Yes,
But-
that's, you
But
gotta
the
differentiate.
problem is with the way people
Yeah.
play that.
Yeah.
But that's what you were saying originally, is as long as the massage parlor or therapeutic services includes other services along with it, you're less likely to see
The
those kind of.
sex trafficking.
Yeah,
what would be the other services?
Chiropractor?
yeah.
A lot of times you go to a
Acupuncture,
chiropractor and they'll
chiropractor.
do massage at the same
Physical
time.
therapy places,
Yeah.
health clubs. So you could keep it that way, that it's allowed in, as part of those type of facilities, so you don't have the strip center that just has the 30-minute massage that's used to only be associated outside military bases. Now it's just obsequious everywhere in America. Right, Robert Kraft got in trouble using one on a strip center in Florida, for God's sake.
Tattoo parlors too.
So the way some communities split them up, they could say massage parlors versus massage therapy establishments. I'm looking at a community we work with, and that, had, over the years, certain nuisance issues related to massage parlors. And they don't allow massage parlors anywhere in that village. They allow massage therapy establishments, for instance, in their commercial districts and in their office, research, industrial, commercial district, but only as special uses. And their ordinance is fairly robust as far as licensing and fingerprinting and on all of that. And I know just from personal experience, every application for a new license or location requires a special use hearing. And that is something that a lot of communities have gone to kind of crack down on the abundance, one, of massage establishments, and two, the nuisance nature to them. So it's something to consider. It doesn't, I mean, now it would be the time to consider putting that into the code.
You don't have a problem, but it is
It could-
nationwide, it is a
We
issue.
publicize how safe the community is, so we
Right.
should be restrictive in that end.
Keep it
Very
classy.
restrictive.
And
So
it can
it
pop
classes.
up, and they're
So you-
typically, they backfill a lot of commercial units.
Yeah,
um,
that's the
So
issue
you,
with
and it's
nail
very
salons
common
and-
with empty vacant commercial units, is that you get, tobacco stores and massage.
Massage.
Yeah. So,
So you,
Well-
Something to
so you have
consider.
to differentiate massage versus massage therapy.
Physical therapy, yeah.
you can,
that
yeah,
can
you
be-
should.
Because
That's what I think we should.
Typically, the way that it's broken down is, one is related to a medical use, associated with a rehabilitation center or something like that,
Yeah,
versus one that is solely for, just for the massage,
Relaxation.
exactly.
Wouldn't it be like more of like the primary use versus the secondary, where massage isn't
Right.
necessarily the primary purpose of the business, it's a secondary?
That's what I
or
was getting at.
ancillary.
That's what I was getting at.
Exactly. Yeah, because, you can receive a therapeutic massage as part of a physical therapy session, so.
well,
yeah.
I have a problem with the definitions here, because I've used this place called Stretch Labs in South Elgin. And that, according to your descriptions, that falls into a massage parlor, but yet that is a therapeutic application.
But that's not the primary purpose, though, at
No.
Stretch Lab. It's stretching, and then probably,
But
my,
that's the
my old
primary
chiropractor
purpose.
used to be
Yeah.
chiropractics, and then depending, sometimes they would give you a trigger point therapy massage afterward.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I didn't go there for massage. You couldn't just, I suppose you maybe could book a massage as well, but it was pretty much, it's a chiropractor, and, there's
But I think
people-
Stretch Lab is its own, that's its primary.
Yes,
It's
it's,
the
I mean,
whole,
it's
business-
hands-on
business-
therapy.
business
So
model
how
is
do you
just for-
differentiate a massage versus the stretch?
Right, so there
I think we can do it.
There are really a couple ways to do it.
Yeah.
One, you delineate, either way, I would delineate the use
Yes.
in the matrix, and you either, one, completely say it's prohibited, which you can do, that's fine.
Which I agree.
Or you can allow it, but I would recommend it be a special use. And then you don't have to delineate the difference between primary versus secondary. You can just put the if you do allow it in, I probably would recommend that you just have a very, significant special use section, not restrictions, but requirements.
Yeah.
That are perfectly valid and would be upheld, and some businesses will uphold to.
And
You know,
it will not,
Legitimate businesses will uphold to your
yes,
ordinances.
yes. It
Correct.
will not hurt anybody that's in
Yeah.
business, that's what we would want in any,
And if it was a special use, they wouldn't have problems coming to a special use hearing and
they would not.
presenting before
Yeah.
the council, or,
Yeah.
and the board,
Can they
it's
have roosters at the massage?
only in the front
Going
window.
downhill.
Just a
Only if it's
question.
a Thai special.
Just a question.
Okay, so we're gonna
Hot
put,
sauce.
we're gonna say no massage parlors.
Yeah, we'll break it up. I
Break
think
it into
that's all
two separate
Carmen,
things, and
and
right
then
now, the
come
idea
up
is
with,
no
yeah.
massage parlors, but we're gonna define the two as separate
Yeah.
ones.
And
Okay.
we'll use the Kleinthorpe and Jenkins specialty on special use, so it's already been
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Pre-
So you
wired
said
up.
massage therapy is the special use,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, massage therapy establishments
Yes.
usually what we see.
Okay, all right.
One,
What else?
I might make one quick correction on the first page of the chart. You have for cannabis business establishments for dispensing, non-dispensing. In the RE1, you just didn't add dashes. I think if we're eliminating it everywhere else, we should probably eliminate
Yeah.
it there.
Yeah, just no dash lines in the first column.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
Just to be
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
yeah.
What's the difference between dispensing and non-dispensing? I mean,
Growing.
I'm aware of them dispensing. How would you have?
Growing. You got a greenhouse?
Or
you're growing.
infusing. You
Right.
could have other operations like infusing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Infusing,
the-
growing, yeah.
The village
I don't know so
currently,
much about this.
Because the community I work in, we actually have an infuser versus a dispensary.
But I mean, you're saying they should be separate?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Oh,
they-
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yes.
And the village by ordinance already has a prohibition on all cannabis-based
Do
businesses.
we need to have a category for a boarding house?
It's prohibited.
It's prohibited, and I thought, to differentiate it from these community residents is small, that's why I threw it in. I'm not suggesting that
So
you
you could point to, you could
allow
point
it
to
and say,
something.
no,
Okay,
it's,
so, but just on the table, can we identify the ones that are prohibited in a little bit bolder fashion instead of just the dashes? It's prohibited.
well, we use P already for permitted, so, N for not allowed, I don't know.
X?
N, X,
You
N
could
for
put
not
NA,
allowed.
not allowed.
I see,
Yeah,
I've
and
seen
not
N.
allowed, yeah.
Not allowed.
Yeah, NA not allowed,
It
okay.
just needs to be prominent.
Sure.
In any of the ones that are,
To make it easy
Not
to say
allowed.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can do
Yeah.
that, we can change.
yeah. NA's,
Just for clarity. Yeah.
NA works?
What do you consider boarding house? Is that an extended stay hotel?
No,
No.
To me, it's kind of an obsolete term. So what is the definition for a boarding house?
It's in the back. Boarding house, it says a residential building or a portion thereof, other than a motel, apartment, hotel, or hotel, apartment, hotel, or hotel, containing lodging rooms for accommodation of 3, but no more than 10 persons who are not members of the keeper's family, and where lodging or meals or both are provided.
Okay, thank you. I didn't
We
see
have
that.
one in downtown Wasco that isn't a boarding house, but they're trying to become one and asking, so we need to keep that in there because people do try to create.
yeah,
Um, On the second page of the table, one of the main headers, it says 6,000 education, public administration. Was that just a code you had in there? Is that a code, 6,000?
yeah, I'm sorry, that was from, I left, I thought
Okay,
I-
just- yeah, just when you
that
cut
was
and-
the reference in that document, they had codes.
That's what I kind of figured.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
so,
it was, yeah, so.
Clean that up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Thanks.
Scrivenger only.
All right. Was on the third page, just above agriculture, construction and business related, I think that you wanted that to be, did you want that to be black with white lettering? Or was that to be grayed, or?
what line, Ralph?
It's the third page of the chart.
Yep.
And if you look at the black line agriculture, go up
Yep.
2 lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Construction and business related, was that meant to be another black line, or was that
It
meant
was,
to be
yeah,
a
that was supposed to
gray?
be, that was supposed to be a gray, and I wound up only, well,
That's okay.
you could have that P and then the contractor yard. I put contractor yard in because this has been an issue in several other communities I work in. I've worked in where people, they're just looking for a place to park semis or landscaping, the landscapers with their big, long trucks and all
Yeah.
their equipment, they're just looking for a place to park all of this stuff.
Well, in the contractor's yard, if it's a landscaper, they'll bring back some of
All the
their-
sod and the.
Yeah,
or the
so it gets to
debris
be,
or
it gets
the-
to be an
Yeah.
issue.
It's maybe stored there a day, and then it's stored there a week, and then it smells to high heaven.
Yeah.
It's
So,
worse than-
Composting and,
Yeah.
yeah.
Grass in July smells
Yeah.
worse than
Yeah.
the hog
Cut.
confinement.
Just out
Okay.
of curiosity, on that, how would you distinguish then, and I have no issues with the contractor yard, but I'm just thinking like if you have a contractor's business,
right, if it's
and then
a,
how do you distinguish between contractor yard and that's my yard where I store my
they're
equipment
actually,
for
they
my
actually have an
business?
office and they're conducting some personnel work, finance work, scheduling work, there's a building there. And people have kind of flirted that, skirted that too, they put up a little shed. that they never-
Right, and that's why I was just
Trailer
curious.
storage is different
Yeah,
than a
so,
contractor
yeah.
yard.
So that's the way I've done it, and it's worked pretty well. They actually have to have a building, and they conduct their operations out of, that's their business address, they're registered, they got their business license there. If there's any state registration requirements, that's their address.
So somebody doesn't just buy a 5-acre farmlet and then run their landscaping yard and their crews. You want to guard against that because they're outlawed in every city and village in the suburbs. They're looking for a home all the time. You don't want them to be,
And I've seen several in our village and right around there where they'll buy an old farm,
yes.
and they store a bunch of stuff in the barn, and then it starts to creep out, and then before you know it, they're selling firewood, because that's, you know,
Yes.
and it just keeps growing, so.
But are they zoned ag at that point, 5 acres or more?
That I don't know what they're zoned.
We just
But
don't-
landscape is different than, you know, a contractor yard of a roofing contractor, or plumbing contractor.
But if you live next door to it, it's still unsightly.
Oh, yeah,
And noisy.
yeah.
Okay.
But I also think that we need to identify trailer storage separately, because, you know, I see a lot of the places where,
RVs and boats, too.
yeah, I mean, that
Yeah.
fits into the same category, but,
Yeah, I could just have it storage yard and include, everything, whether,
Storage
expand,
yard.
or I can make a new definition, but I.
And you
I
could have, all those yards have to be a special use to be permitted. That would cover if
Covered.
somebody has a.
RVs and,
Yeah,
so it says, yeah, I'll pay me $100 a month and I'll store your RV or your boat or your, yeah.
so,
Well, we've
I
got
know
a
we,
few of those.
Yeah.
I know we skipped around, and I
we
know,
need to address it because you've got them right,
Burlington,
Yeah,
I think, within 100 yards of this building. there's
Yeah.
one.
yeah, there is, I was looking at a photo.
okay.
Yeah. Joe?
So-
I know we skipped around, and I know nothing on the topic, but we're showing a funeral home being permitted. Now, is that,
You know, that's
since
what
a
it was
lot
in
of-
the, and I think that's what it was in the current.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
since a lot of
So
people
I-
are cremated nowadays, and I
That
don't
takes
know.
a special permit. Cremation facility would be a special permit for most every village zoning, isn't it?
Except this says
Except this
funeral
one.
home.
This
and
one
there's no-
doesn't do that, though, and it
Pardon
should.
me?
Our code currently doesn't do that, and it should, to have a
Yeah.
special use for cremation.
So the funeral home, where it's
hard to get.
permitted, we're saying that there's no crematory.
No, we are saying that there, if you go to the definition of funeral home, it says, which is further down the road.
Yep.
An establishment where the dead are prepared for burial display and for rituals before burial or cremation, including chapels. Now, it doesn't say that they are actually doing the cremation, but it implies that they will be authorized to do that
You
cremation.
should put a little X in there that it requires a special use permit to have a cremation part of that facility.
It says a funeral home may or may not perform cremation and have
Yeah.
crematoriums.
Yeah.
It's kind of open.
So now it's saying you can or you can't, you can and you
Sounds-
can't.
to me, when
So
I read
do
that,
you
it
want
sounds
or
like
not?
it's open.
But if you do, you said special use, right? So if, under that definition, the way it's written, I would say special use.
Yeah, I almost think because sometimes the parking requirements or the parking impacts
Yeah.
can be substantial.
And then plus you're talking about a crematorium too,
Yeah,
so.
The parking generally is the biggest issue.
for my funeral not, because no one will come, but I mean for other.
Well,
Well, right now you
a
have
funeral
guesses.
procession
Yeah.
is an issue also.
So we'll
And
change it.
today, I don't know if there's any young people here, but
The room today.
people in our generation, speaking of my generation, knew the protocol when you're in a funeral procession. Younger people don't.
The food truck is coming.
And so it's just as important as the parking, just that protocol is very different, and they don't teach that.
Right, but that's not part of the zoning. Right.
I know,
but
it's
I
just
agree.
important.
I agree, okay.
But making it a special use would address all.
Yes, yes, all right.
Got it.
Daycare home,
What?
Daycare.
Daycare home,
Daycare
yeah,
home.
yep, yes.
why, there's a comment there about why is it special use in R3?
Daycare center,
R4.
daycare home, special use in R4, which is
R4.
5,000 square feet, right?
Yeah.
This should
Yeah,
be
so
an
I think in the
accessory
current, let me
use.
find it here.
Add to Article 8, why
Permitted
is
in
in
every, in all
R4?
others.
Well, you should actually add a comment over there on the far right side, Jim Brown, that should, why is it in R4?
Why S in R4?
Why is
Yeah.
S in
Yeah,
R4?
right.
Yeah, so a daycare home, it's licensed by the state, it's just someone who's taking care of between 3, and I think the threshold is 10.
12, or I think.
Yeah, I think it's 10, so R4, you've got a home, I mean, there's people, when I lived in Oak Park, there was people on lots that were, 5,000 square feet, that were running, there's all types of daycare.
Yeah.
The only issue is really sometimes with the drop-off in the morning, but if you've only got 5 kids,
Yeah.
it's normally not an issue. I mean, it doesn't become.
Would you do it, just put that as permitted?
Permitted then.
Or make it
Yeah,
permitted?
Yeah,
Yeah, let's make that permitted.
permit instead of
Yeah,
special.
right.
I didn't see any reason
Yeah.
to treat a family or homeowner that wanted to run a daycare
Sure.
for maybe, because they like kids, or maybe the extra
Yeah.
income, because they live in, you know, if their house is big enough and they want to have X number of kids, you
Yeah.
know, and they get licensed by the state, you have more power.
Yeah.
Why are we restricting?
Yeah,
it?
exactly right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that becomes a permitted.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right. Are there any other comments in there? Okay. Talked about the construction, I think it's, one comment you have, notes on the third page under religious institutions, you have, this is from the 2023 ordinance, needs further review.
Yeah, we had, you know, permitted in every zone, and it's, you, so churches or religious institutions today are normally quite large. I mean, you get some that go into, you know, vacant malls and everything, and it's not an issue, but if there's a new religious institution being established, it's normally quite substantial, and it normally includes a lot of extra cars, extra uses, like maybe a daycare, maybe some type of religious instruction, a school. I just think there should be a discretionary review on that. I'm not
No.
suggesting,
Pole barns that could turn
I would
into a church.
advocate it as a special use,
yeah, that's what I say, you know.
because they're, you know, religious institutions means a lot of different things to different people. And I've seen them operate out of a 500 square foot, or build the Taj Mahal.
Right.
Or a pole barn in the back
Yeah.
40.
So do you want to change all the Ps to Ss? Is that what- or the whole?
Well, I would change at least some of, yeah, I would change some of them to
But you
S's.
wouldn't want to have them listed in the first part of this, in that small of a footprint.
I would not think so, but, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, my gut reaction would be, well, since we are talking about the potential for parking, all those types of issues, I would almost think they'd want to be a special use in all those,
Yes.
all the ones
Even
that
in
we
your
have currently
commercial,
P.
because they may not have.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But shouldn't it be a larger area to even, I mean, shouldn't we restrict it from the smaller areas?
Well, special use
If you
means,
make a special use, if you change them all from permitted to special.
yeah.
I don't think we should allow it at all in the first part, on the smaller footprint.
Okay, like the R1 through R4?
Yep.
Okay.
I think, though, if you were to allow all of them to be a special use, because we're talking about some of them to be a special use, I mean, I guess if it's in a smaller home, some churches may not start out big,
They don't.
you know, and they may start out small, and so if you at least give them the option or the chance for special use to start out in a home, then at least, A, it's available, but then B, if for some reason you know, you find out, hey, every Sunday, there's like 5 cars in front of this house, what's going on? And then, geez, if it's not in the code, you know, or if it's not allowed, at least, hey, there's a way to enforce it. You gotta come in, you gotta have a special use, rather than just telling, you know, those 5 or 6 people that, oh, sorry, it's not allowed at all, so.
I'm gonna go back to the safety thing, or recommend everybody watch State Line a couple of days a week. I think it should be more restrictive than just special use. I think it should be in a larger footprint. Just,
I tend to agree with you, Jim, or Joe, that, you know, the R1 through R4 should be, you know, excluded in special use and RE.
One,
All.
2, and 3.
And the rest, right. So it's prohibited in the Rs and special use in the others.
I just, and my opinion is, and I would disagree with that, I think if we're gonna allow it, we should allow it as special use for everything, because even Riverside Church up the road, when I worked for the city of St. Charles, they started out in a house with 10 people. And then they've bought another house and got a special use over on the other side of the river, and then when they outgrew that, that's when they built their building up the road, and they've, I mean,
The one on Bolcom and Randall?
yeah, you know, so I mean, some of them, and I don't disagree. I mean, I agree, you know, you got the the church up in Barrington, it's huge. You know, Willow Creek, that's huge, but sometimes they do start out very small. And so I don't know that, I mean, if we're very restrictive, then that may never happen here, and maybe that's what we want.
But aren't we here to protect the homeowner from any enjoyment of their home as a home residence?
Sure.
That's our primary mission, not to be a feeder program for the
Yeah.
Christ Baptist Bible Church or whatever those guys are.
Yeah, no, I understand that too. I just think if it's a special use and it's a couple of people getting together at a home, I mean, the special use would identify that, you know, oh geez, we got 50 people. Well, we can't really approve your special use in an R4, you know, but
And
maybe
Chris, I
consider this
understand
point.
that.
That's my
To
opinion.
me, it's the protection of bad people, not good people. And it's hard to tell. I think just having some restriction there, at least it starts we're starting somewhere.
So the way I guess I look at it is if not I personally, but if someone wanted to invite people over to their house to start a church, there's nothing wrong and nothing you can do about it, they can do that. If they're gonna buy a building and then put a sign up on board of it and say, this is now the First
Right.
Frederick
No, that's
Memorial
true.
Church or whatever, you know,
The Church of the Divine Prophet.
or whatever it is, that's a whole different, different thing. So I don't think we're restricting him that way. And I do kind of agree with, you know, like an R4, I think they can invite people over in a small setting, a small environment. So my
That's what I
person,
was gonna say. If someone wants to invite
Yeah.
5 people over for
Yeah.
Sunday dinner and hold a church
So
service, nobody's gonna.
I
Know
would,
it.
I would
Know it,
say
yeah.
that I would kind of lean towards R1, 2, 3, and 4 as being not permitted,
Right,
and then being special use in RE1, RE2, and RE3,
yeah, I agree,
and C1, C2, and F.
yeah.
So basically, if you just took that line and just took R1, R2, R3, and 4 and put it to dashes,
Yep.
and then change all the other Ps to Ss.
Is that-
Right?
I
Is
think
that-
though,
how's
if, using your same logic, and I agree, if somebody's gonna buy a house for a church, then maybe it shouldn't even be in any of the residential, and just have it in commercial. I'm just saying, because I mean, because what's the, you know,
Right.
using your
Make a
same
good
logic, and
point.
I completely agree with you, I didn't think of that. If somebody
Yeah.
wanted to buy a house in an R4 district,
Yep.
what's the difference between buying a house in an R4 district or buying a house in a residential neighborhood with 20 acres? It's a residential
Actually,
neighborhood,
the
and maybe
RE
that use
the
doesn't
RE
belong
are
there.
bigger, and they have pole barns that are big.
Sure.
They could accommodate.
So
But
maybe it isn't
Chris,
at all
you're
in
saying just
residential.
restricted to commercial area, right, and no residential.
That's-
I'm more inclined for that.
Yeah,
Are you? Okay.
because I agree, I mean, if, there's no difference if you have friends over and you want to worship or something, that's fine, but I guess I didn't,
On a
what
regular
you said, I mean, buying the house
Buy a house and
to have a
slap
church,
sign
that's,
on it.
that changed my perspective on it, and you're right, I think that's probably,
Yeah, the
you know,
zoning
more
code is to
appropriate.
protect- That's our
The
whole point,
neighborhood.
is to
Yeah.
protect
Yeah.
the neighborhood and the investment of the individual.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, good point.
So we have a couple churches here in town. Does anyone know what their zoning is? So I really don't want to create a lot of non-conforming uses.
I thought they would be grandfathered in. I
That's
thought
right.
that-
They would be non,
But it's still
legal
not-
non-conforming.
Well, okay, but we're not gonna go out chasing people,
No.
right?
No. I
But
just,
he's
I'm
just trying
just
to-
curious what they are and if there's been.
rather than creating more
Yeah.
nonconformities, I get it.
I just, but, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the question was, do we have any examples in town?
I
Right.
think
That,
there's
and
a-
I wouldn't necessarily make it too restrictive. I mean, if we don't have a lot of commercially zoned properties now, and I would not necessarily want those converted to a religious use.
Unless by special permit.
Right, but, so I think still having an opportunity for placement on a larger estate residential would be fine.
I think
No.
Chris's point
Yeah.
is the most valid, Jim, of just restricted to commercial and no
And farm.
residential, and we'll
And farm.
go from there.
Well, and I guess maybe to your point, before we say one way or the other, maybe we should find out. I don't know how many churches there are in Campton Hills, but off the top of my head,
There's
but.
one in,
One in Wasco.
there's one in Wasco, isn't there one on McDonald that I've heard, I haven't been to it, seen it yet, but
Of
I'm
the
told.
47 in McDonald.
Down on the
Oh,
farm.
yeah,
Well,
that's right,
The Hamlet
Right, the
area of
corner
Wasco has some nuances that most villages or municipalities or towns don't have. So we're not professing that we would change that, I mean, right?
So-
Isn't it
so let-
grandfathered in?
I just brought it up, so it's.
No, it's good, it's a good discussion. So let's say for right now, why don't we just put only allowed by special use in C1, C2, and F? And we will maybe take a look and see if we could, if we are creating any nonconformities.
Right.
But, I mean, that's what I would kind of look at.
It's not the end of the world if we are.
Yeah, right.
So they
But-
can take over a farm property
If they have a special use,
if they have a special.
Yeah, would be an S, yeah, be
if
special
it's
use.
granted. But
Yeah,
not easy to get a special use.
Yeah.
because they did at Silver Glen and Corin, just,
Yeah.
they had that, they bought a farm and then,
Yogeshwar.
yeah.
And had 1,200 people that showed up one day that nobody knew about.
Sundays, yeah.
So,
So, earlier when we talked about
That's why you want special use.
Yes.
yeah,
That was
the
great.
mobile food services.
yes,
Now when I look at the end of the chart with temporary uses, shouldn't the mobile food services be somehow considered under the temporary use? Because
Could be.
it's not permanent, right?
it might be one of those things that is.
That's a good home for it.
It is it's under general sales or service, and it's under food services, so that does kind of make sense too. You know, so it could probably be in either one, but I like it, I think, under food services. I think really that the order in there is really to assist the
Finding it.
finding it. And so I would think of it being under food services probably pretty well.
So
But
I,
you
either
could
Jim or Chris
cross-reference it.
brought up see, to me, I split it again, because if you have a business that has 8 mobile food service trucks, and you're in this location, is different than the food service truck that comes in from Elgin to, be at a specific event. That's two different things.
I mean, you could, under temporary uses, you could put food service truck, C.
Well, I mean,
C
could it
above,
be in
you know.
both places, or,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what Ralph
Yeah,
is saying.
just like reference,
The food service.
yeah, food service truck for reference, general sales, reference general sales, or what it was, where we have it,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, okay. All right, what
I
else?
had, one question about the
Yeah.
gaming parlor. Is that like a
Gaming parlor.
that's the only purpose the building serves, is for gaming?
There are 2 categories. One is the video gambling gaming, which I don't know if we allow that now or not, but that's one. And the other is kind of these gaming arcades is more for preteens and teens.
Oh.
you know.
which category is it in?
Arts entertainment, and that's on page 2, middle of page 2-ish.
Well, we have had gaming at one of the restaurants in town.
More than one.
And that, so, yeah, let me, yeah, so.
Well, that's because it's all checked out. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, time out.
gaming, yeah,
So the gaming category, the gambling gaming, there are establishments where that's like Lottie's and Dottie's, that's their whole purpose. It's a gaming part. You come there to gamble. They actually, their design clientele is younger, middle-aged women who don't like to go to casinos and gamble. And that's their business model. And they have to get a liquor license per state law to have the gaming, but it's not a restaurant. So it's not something that is a food service, a regular food service place. But it is, I mean, that's their whole purpose is gaming. And I don't know if we allow that or not. I'm just bringing it up. And then there is the arcade and the non-gambling for kids, they play the video games or they got,
So
whatever.
that's the amusement arcade.
Yeah, amusement arcade, yeah. I couldn't remember what I wound up
Yeah,
calling it.
amusement arcade is what you have, yeah.
They're, very distinct.
Okay, gaming parlor,
But-
not permitted.
What you have next door
Right.
is an ancillary use to their restaurant.
That's my question.
Yeah.
So
What Jim
this
is saying,
is
do you wanna,
100%.
do you wanna make the Dottie's Cafe that has nothing to do with cafe? It's pure machines and a liquor license to drink wine or beer as you
Bet.
bet.
Right.
And it's just that establishment.
That's
Right.
I don't
that
think it
style.
would go over very big in Campton Hills.
Well,
No, I mean, I don't think they'd get a lot of play.
check. But they might
Be
put it
surprised.
by Taylor Street on the street because people drive and
Yeah.
pull into those places.
I know somebody who owns a couple of these.
Yep.
When I talked to them about, different areas, they would stay away from what you would call more affluent areas and look for areas that are not affluent.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as long as it's ancillary, the gaming is
Is
allowed.
allowed.
Correct.
So this one is just strictly the building is.
Primary.
Primary use is the gaming.
Yeah.
Can we add gambling in there, just in the description?
I can, if you want to put the title.
Oh,
Yeah.
in the lower, or,
Yeah, gaming, gambling. What's the
just a
state
couple
term
lines
for it?
above that, amusement arcade, I don't think there's no permitted or not permitted, in the C1 district, just blank.
Oh,
I would
is
think
that
we,
just that oversight again?
yeah, yeah,
So
but
it
I
should
think
be-
that would be.
Or no, you know what I did? I
What'd you
put it in
do?
the wrong column. I should shift that. It should be,
Not RD.
not our.
Yeah,
I
there
did.
we go.
Okay,
Okay.
good, I'll correct that.
And then just, and not, not RD, okay, all right, very good.
So to step back for a moment, just briefly, I wanted to look at something that I worked on before. The one thing we need to be careful about with restricting religious uses, which is typically why it's either permitted in all districts or a special use in some or all districts, is protecting against inhibiting abilities or individuals' right to assembly, religious assembly. So the courts have upheld restrictions on assembly through the special use process, but I would be careful about restricting a religious use entirely in one type of zoning district. You can still allow for it to be a special use, is probably what I'd recommend. And you can have, and part of the special use process could require, individual attendee counts and to accommodate for parking. And typically, you can differentiate between, if you're in a different zoning district, like a larger zoning district, you would require a larger building, for instance. Like you could say, if you're in, let's just take a commercial district, which has a larger, or may have a larger lot size, you would require the building to be larger and also the lot to be larger so as to accommodate for traffic flow
Okay.
and parking. So, you may, what would probably be what I would recommend most would be to have special use in all districts. I don't know that I would do it as permitted because I don't know, not without looking at the zoning map, could I say, if you say permitted in some districts and then special use in another, you could have a larger property where you could have somebody want to build a very, very large church, but it might not fit the lot the right way. And with the special use process, you have more control over the size of the
Well, I think
building,
we said-
parking, all of
We
that.
said special use in,
Yeah.
so you're saying we should just special use in every district?
That's typically that's the most simple way to do it.
Because I think right now we just said C1 and C1, C2, and F.
Right.
We would allow special use.
If
But
you're gonna do
saying-
special use, I would have it special use in all the districts. Because if you prohibit, then you could have an instance where, you have somebody who is in one of the other residential districts, even a larger residential lot in some of the larger districts, that wants to start a church, like you said, or have a church. And if you prohibit it entirely and don't even give them the option to meet some sort of parameters for the attendance, then you could be infringing upon their constitutional right to
Right.
assemble.
Yeah, that's a good point. In fact, so if you're allowing any type of assembly use, like you have these amusement facilities or sporting facilities that are assembling, then why are you necessarily
Right.
not allowing it? And, you're allowing
Right.
a sports venue that has kind of the same off-site impacts or similar off-site impacts, so why are you limiting a different type of assembly?
Sure.
And
And that's what a lot of the case law is focused on too.
Yeah.
And the special use process is fine as long as the standards are upheld on other types of assemblies.
So, Carmen,
Non-religious assemblies.
Our charter is to make recommendations, right? So, I hope that the village board wouldn't, pay attention to all the work that we put in and just rubber stamp it. So there could be a number of subjects that we talked about and debated back and forth, but ultimately, it's their call, right? So in just the way I think of what we're doing, because we have a very healthy dialogue and give and take, and it's not everybody saying that this is good or bad. But some of I don't think there's anything wrong with our recommendations being more restrictive, and when we turn it over to the village, it's their responsibility to review what we've done thoroughly. If they don't do that, they're not doing their job. And I would hate to have that happen with the amount of time, energy, and effort that everybody's put in so far. And so I'm asking you for a little insight. You're gonna have some input with the village board. I don't think the work that we're doing should just be taken and rubber stamped.
Yep.
So I don't think
Right.
there's anything wrong with us making, a recommendation like that. In the same dialogue that you're having with us, you would have with the village board, or we have to have a public hearing too, right?
Right.
So I mean, some of
Right.
these
Prior to
things
those
are gonna come out. And I'm not, saying what I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just thinking process related, that's all.
Just comment on that, though. You're talking about allowing or making special use for religious institutions. But all the other categories we got, which would be, in your analogy, community center, sports, performing arts, where you have, area groups of assembly, those are all specifically prohibited in residential. So why can't we do the same thing for religious?
Because of the constitutional protections. You
But
don't
I'd
have-
say the other ones are not a constitutional right. The religious right to
No,
assembly
it's
is a
not. It
constitutional
says
right.
it won't.
It's very different.
And maybe,
It's
To-
wrongly interpreted. The Constitution is often wrongly interpreted.
and maybe to help avoid
We're not
legal,
prohibiting religious assembly.
we're just telling them where they can only go.
Right.
Which is prohibiting it.
Right, right.
Which is prohibiting it, and I think though,
Carmen's just offering this,
Yeah,
there's been a
Right.
tremendous
Yeah.
amount of litigation
Yes.
concerning
That's-
religious uses.
Right.
Congress passed two separate acts, RLUIPA, it's
RLUIPA.
called 1 and 2, and then they corrected it. It had to be 2005 maybe, and there was a lot of litigation prior to that, and I don't think it really stopped after.
Anything and everything
Right.
could be litigated.
Yeah, but
Right.
it's
True.
a
Anything and
lot.
everything.
but
True,
I
but
think,
it's a tremendous amount of litigation involving municipalities and
Right.
religious
We can
uses.
avoid lawyer issues later
Yes,
if we
I
just
think-
make a special use
Right.
across
and
the
I,
board.
that's what I was gonna say, is I think,
Right.
that's really good to know, and obviously that's part of the reason why you're here, because even though we have our zoning regulations, the last thing we need is for the village to have more litigation and more issues, because the zoning code has been very contentious, maybe is the best way to put it, up to this point. And I think to set the village up in a positive manner to avoid future potential litigation, I think, I would be all for just putting a special use on, I mean, because it's,
Across all the districts.
so, I mean, there's still landmines that we can step on, but let's lessen the field and the
Exactly.
number of landmines in that field.
Right, right
Let's
now
not
it's,
invite at the public hearing, getting called out. and-
Right.
And saying, gosh, Clanthorpe's not a very good lawyer, they didn't do that.
right now it's permitted, in the 2023 ordinance, it's permitted in all the districts except for 3 that it's not permitted in at all, but those districts have specific characteristics, open space, farm business, and the RD district. So the restrictions in those districts wouldn't apply to any infringement on assembly, because open space, you're not supposed to be constructing anything in open space, that's the nature of it. So anything you do to restrict it more is going to be, any change you make is going to be more restrictive than what you have currently. So you could,
If they're all special, it can still be litigated.
it could, but
Right.
there has been a decent amount of case law saying that reasonable special use restrictions are fine.
And this is reasonable.
Well,
We're just
reasonable
saying
would
that
be.
it's a larger footprint.
Reasonable when I say that it's allowed in a district, but has to go through the zoning process. So if the applicant didn't meet the elements for a special use, and the zoning board and then the village board said no, and that was turned down, then as long as the village could defend its process, then that would be considered reasonable. Not allowing it in a specific district without giving the right to apply or go through a request for zoning relief would likely be seen as unreasonable. So you could have some districts where it's absolutely permitted, and then others where it's special use, like in the residential.
Make a
district.
compelling argument.
Yeah.
Do you have language for those special use
Restriction?
restrictions and
Or like-
items that you've used in other communities for this? Because I think,
Worksheet.
I mean, I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. We want to avoid litigation.
And we want to prevail if we
And
are litigating.
And we want to prevail if we're litigated, but I agree with you. I mean, I worked in a community where, well, when I worked in Elgin, they didn't want a lot of people didn't want the Fox Valley gun range going in. And basically, the way it was presented was, in a nutshell, you can say no, and we're going to be sued, because the way the special use was written and everything was, it
Right.
can legally be there. You have no legal right to deny it. And so I think if we're upfront and we can get ahead of that, I think we in the village are much better off.
Yeah, they'd have to be similar to non-institutional use, non-religious institutional uses for those requirements. The rest of the review would just be based on the elements of the special use.
Well,
So,
Don't you have to have some criteria for this special use then?
there can be limited terms, like a building size, let's say. If you know something that's going to be a location that's going to be, for lack of a better word, packed to the brim a couple days a week during certain hours, then you may want to be able to limit the building size depending on the size lots you have in the village. Now, an amusement use, like a small sports stadium or, say, a soccer training facility that might have tournaments or something like that, could have the same type of effect on the surrounding area during limited periods of time, but the elements of the special use review of the application, traffic impacts on the surrounding, noise, light, all of those things, that would already be part of the special use process. So you wouldn't have to specifically, and couldn't specifically, have different requirements for a church. You couldn't say, well, your music has to be at this level, whereas a sports stadium, you're limited by whatever level is in the village code. So as long as the requirements of, the specifics that an applicant for a religious use is held to is the same for a non-religious use, then you're fine.
Okay. So the criteria would be, you're saying, as long as the criteria are the same for any special use?
Right. So, one way I've seen it, I talked about building size a couple of times. Sometimes it's in the definition. You might say different categories of religious assembly. Like you might have a smaller facility that is of X amount of square feet, or you might have something that's considered a much larger building. And a smaller building might be allowed in districts that have smaller lots, whereas a larger building would be allowed in a district with larger lots. Now, a lot of that's still going to be covered by your bulk use allotments. But, in a community like this where you have larger lots, you may want to designate, areas where a larger
Or even the zoning,
assembly would be allowed.
it has coverage,
Right.
coverage restrictions.
Right.
into it, so. All right, I think we have had an excellent discussion there. It's 8:25. So I would still like to get to the calendar. I know we didn't finish this section, but I thought we hit it pretty good. Perhaps the next meeting, Jim, you'll make some of those, corrections and changes, and then we can look at it again and continue on into the definition portions of it.
I do have a question. So,
Yeah.
this can be, as we found tonight, and it was a good discussion, you're looking at 2-3 different documents, the definitions, the chart here. Sometimes you're even going back to, well, what's the purpose of that district? You're looking back to those purpose statements. So there's a lot of moving parts in doing this. Any suggestions on how to present this? Just want to keep it the same way next time? you want to see another, things broken out differently? I tried to do the comparison of the definitions, just so, you know, I thought it moved pretty well tonight, and I thought it might be, I could have flipped a coin whether if we were going to get through it, you know, tonight,
Right.
but I thought it was pretty good. A lot of things came up that I hadn't anticipated, and I think we did get through a lot. But is there anything to make this go smoother next time, or that you want to see?
Our first thing is, like, we never really, I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about it, the chart comparing 23 and 24 land uses and their definitions. That was very helpful, and I think
Okay.
I would keep that, and then I had several comments to make on it, but I thought it was really nice. What did we have? What do we have now? And then you've got some comments over there, so that was very helpful. Anybody else?
I wouldn't change the layout that you have, because we all spent the ample amount of time going through it. And it'll
Okay.
be easier to pick
All right,
up where
I
we
just
left
wanted to
off.
Okay.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, very good. So,
And next time, I will have the entire Article 5, which is not that lengthy, okay? But it does have these special conditions that we were referring to for the religious uses outlined. And there's a couple different categories, and I just didn't have time to review that. So I'll include all of Article 5, and then I'll take a stab at some of these conditions for
that-
special use.
And we'll rely on Kleinthorpe
Yeah.
and Jenkins'
I'll try and have all that.
litigated.
Okay, so you'll see a
Okay.
completer package.
Ralph, can I suggest that we table
yes.
6B, I'm sorry, 6C, Article 10, landscape standards to the next meeting?
Yes.
And then focus on the summer schedule.
Yes, that was my plan.
Want to second the motion? There's a
So,
motion.
I have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Teat seconds the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those, all right, so we'll come back to that, and now let's just work on the summer schedule, June through August, all right? I think, I've heard from one person, we're trying to look at one meeting a day, one meeting a month, one a month.
It just feels like one a day.
It can be on any day, you're not restricted to Wednesdays, guys.
Okay, well, we'll start with Wednesdays, because there might be some restrictions in here, but
Are
let's just.
we starting with May like, we're not gonna do another May meeting?
Nope, we are going to do 2 in May.
Okay.
May 22nd.
So
May
our next,
22nd.
our next regularly scheduled meeting is May 22nd.
Okay.
So the next
Just make sure.
possible meeting after that would be the 5th, which I know I cannot make, or I'm pretty sure I can't make. And I know I can't make the 12th. So that leaves the 19th and 26th. My best estimate is I can make the 26th. If we're sticking with Wednesdays, if we're just kind of going along the Wednesdays,
June 26th is the only Wednesday I'm available.
okay?
And I've blocked out my calendar for Wednesdays at these meetings between now and 2026 when we get done.
Well, Jim, you and I picked the 26th of June earlier today, didn't we?
No, I can't be here.
Oh, that's the one you
Yeah,
can't.
but that's okay.
Okay.
I don't need to be here. I'll have the packet done.
Yeah?
I'll do a lengthier staff memo, and I'll have more time to prepare, because I'll have a month to, a
Listen
whole
to the
month
tape.
to do the packet. Well,
I mean, if we could change the day, like Thursday the 27th, that would be a possibility.
I mean, that entire week, I'm out of town.
Yeah, all right. So,
I prefer,
I'm good for
Ralph, for us to
26.
stay on that
the 26th?
Wednesday schedule.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So
Yeah,
right
just
now,
do it
let's go with the
26th.
26th of June. All right. Terry, is that, are you
As
still?
of right now, that's fine.
Okay, that's okay. We don't firm commitments, we just need a quorum of people who anticipate they can be there. In July, July is wide open. I don't think anybody really wants to meet on the 3rd.
Nope.
And that would actually only be a week away anyway, so
And I will be out of the country the week of the 14th and the 21st.
14 to 21,
No,
okay?
the 14th through the 27th, those 2 weeks, I'm actually in Switzerland.
14 to 27, so that would leave the 31st
Yeah,
or the 17th.
I'm gone on the 10th.
It's gone the 10th. How about the 17th? Oh, no, you said your 14th.
And, I mean, you could always meet without me too,
Yeah.
but I'm just not, yeah, those two.
24th keeps it on the same kind of time interval as.
Okay, so
we
how's the
have laid out.
24th look? How's the 24th look of July?
Okay, 7/24.
1,
Okay,
2,
right
Joe, that's 3,
I think that's
possibly
okay.
4,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
All right, so 20,
No, I think we'll be in the maps that day, so we won't.
24 of July? All right, and then let's look at August. I know I cannot make the 14th. So,
21st,
rough.
I think is a good date because we're getting, I don't know when kids go back to school and Labor Day in that last week. And it stays at that 4-week interval,
Yeah,
20, we're talking 21?
21.
21st.
I'd like to see everybody here then, because I'm hoping we'll be at the public hearing then.
I'm out on the 21st, out of town.
okay.
I
How does
don't-
everybody else look on the 21st?
I don't think I don't think that's doable, Mark. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's nice, but after we get through all this, we're gonna wanna re-review everything that we've done too.
All right, so,
August.
who can make the 21st? 1,
Right now, it looks like I
2?
Chris?
You say you think you can?
I can,
Okay.
looks like it.
So how about the 21st of August? So right now, I'm seeing June 26th, July 24th, August 21st. Does that sound right? Okay.
You'll
And then
have-
in
you'll have at least
September-
4.
And then September, you'll be back to 2 a month if we.
Yeah.
All the way through the end of the year.
Yeah, yeah, September would be back to the 11th and the 25th, which would actually give us 3 weeks after that one anyway, so.
That'll motivate you to finish in August,
there you go.
Joe,
Right,
All right,
because I'm going back.
so,
right?
so just, I'm gonna ask for a motion to amend the zoning commission schedule for the summer of 2024, June through August, to June 26th, one meeting, June 26th. The meeting in July is July 24th. And then in August, it is August 21st.
So moved.
I have a motion, a motion by Mr. Gabarsky. Is there a second?
Second.
Sure, Mr. Teed, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. How about a motion for adjournment, unless anybody has a lot more
One
comments?
question, on
Yes.
those 1 meetings, would you go to 2.5 hours as your max time?
I think we'll leave our current, this is my suggestion, is to leave the current 2 hours. I can always extend it.
Yes.
And be able to do that, and I probably would not go more than 2.5, so.
At a
so-
6:30 start time as usual.
Yeah, unless you have a suggestion for any reason to do it later or
Well,
sooner.
is
it-
6:30 doable for everybody, or is 6 not doable?
6 is not
I'd rather
doable
do
for
it
me.
earlier than later.
Okay, 6 is not.
No.
No, I get home from work about that time.
Well,
If
then
I'm
leave it
lucky.
at the 2 hours and let's see how we do.
Yeah,
And
and
I
6:30 will-
understand the part, but, we'll probably be 12 meetings into this. There's a lot of data, and I think everybody feels the same way. We want to make sure that the recommendation we make is sound.
Okay.
I wanted to quick make one maybe suggestion or request. At the next meeting, as we talk about the uses again, and the zoning districts and things, if there are items that you would want us to discuss maybe more, maybe highlight a couple of them or something?
Yeah.
Because there may be some that, we all look at and we're like, that's fine, but if there's some in particular that you really want some guidance on, I would,
really
just to
had
help
in-
guide the
yeah,
discussion
I
a
know.
little bit.
And I feel bad, I had intended to
So-
do that, we just hit the busy permitting season, and now more of my time is really spent at the counter.
No, I get it.
or answering
I'm
phone
just thinking,
calls.
I'm saying like,
Kind of hard to.
I think this was great for tonight, but now that we're starting to get into it and get
Yeah,
into
I
the
can-
weeds,
I
if
can-
there's some weeds you want us to
I can-
plow through, let us
Yeah.
know, is all I'm asking.
That'll help us focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
as
all.
well. That'll help us focus. Okay. Any other comments before I ask for a motion to adjourn? If not,
Move to adjourn?
Mr. Kopeck, I have a motion to adjourn, second. Mr. Gabarsky, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?